Hello, everybody. Santa wants to share a very special story with you called Wake Up, Dormouse. Santa Claus is here. This is written by Eleanor Schmid. Gus lived all by himself in an old oak. Like everyone else in his family, he slept the whole day long, for he was a dormouse. Every night he woke up, stretched his legs, and crept out of his nest. Then he went looking for something to eat. He needed to get round and fat so he wouldn't be hungry during his long winter sleep. He looked for fruit, mushrooms, acorns, and nuts. He gnawed sweet tree bark or hunted for insects. Whatever he couldn't finish eating, he carried back to his nest for later. In the fall, when the nights and days grew cold, Gus would curl up in his nest like all the other dormice and sleep until spring. And so every year Gus slept through the visit from Santa Claus. He only knew of him from the stories he heard from the other animals in the forest. But this year, Gus wanted to meet Santa Claus too, just for once in his life. If only he knew how to keep awake. Maybe if he ate a little less, maybe if he just napped a little. He curled his tail tightly around himself, laid his paws on his tummy, closed his eyes, and dreamed a quick dream. Caw! Caw! Humans coming! Shrieked the crow on a branch nearby. Gus woke up suddenly. Was Santa Claus coming now? Carefully, Gus stuck his head out of the hole and opened his sleepy eyes wide. A mother was gathering branches of pine and mistletoe with her children. What did they want those for? Santa Claus wasn't there. Gus drew back into his snug hole in the branch. He mustn't go to sleep again now. Mustn't sleep. Mustn't sleep. Drrrt, drrrt, drrrt. Gus was startled out of his sleep. A woodpecker was boring a hole in a tree just above his nest. Has Santa Claus been here yet? Gus asked quickly. The woodpecker shook his head and kept on drilling. Drrrt, drrrt. Do you know when he's coming? Gus asked. When it's cold, the woodpecker replied. But it's cold now, Gus thought, as he crept back inside again. A few withered leaves clung to the branches, and except for the sound of the woodpecker, the forest was very, very quiet. It was nearly dark. Something rustled on the ground. A squirrel ran up the tree and begged Gus for an acorn. I can't find my food, he said, and I'm hungry. Gus gave him an acorn. Have you seen Santa Claus? He asked. I don't want to miss him this time. The other animals are awake in the winter and get to see him, but I'm always asleep and don't know when he comes. I'll call you when Santa Claus comes, said the squirrel, and he jumped down and bounded away. An owl had been perched nearby, and she heard everything. Gus shivered. He snuggled down into his nest again. Outside it got colder and colder. The wind whistled and tore through the sky leaves. It shook the trees, but Gus didn't wake up. One night, the first snow fell. The fox was lurking in the bushes. He was hungry. Suddenly he pricked up his ears and sniffed. Then he saw a light at the edge of the forest. Joyfully, he sprang forward. Santa Claus was trudging through the snow with his donkey. With each step, the little bells jingled, softly at first, then louder and louder and louder. The animals in the forest had been waiting for this sound. Santa Claus had come at last. He entered a clearing in the forest, and all the animals came hopping and bounding and flying to meet him. "Come, my friends," Santa said softly. "I have gifts for each of you." Santa took a big sack off the donkey's back and opened it. He pulled out carrots and red apples and bread. The animals came closer, waiting for their food. On this moonlit winter night, no one was afraid of anyone else. Santa had brought sausage and a slab of bacon for the foxes. For the birds, he hung little bags of seed and fat on the branches and spread seed around on the ground. He gave nuts to the squirrels and cheese to the crow. The mice ran from one spot to another, nibbling on everything. At last, Santa Claus sat down wearily. "Have you all had enough?" he asked. "Did I forget anyone?" The squirrel cocked his ears and waved his tail back and forth. He'd promised someone something, but now he'd forgotten what it was. Uneasily, he looked from one animal to another. Somewhere in the distance, the owl hooted. "Ooh, ooh, wake up, Gus, wake up." The owl had to call several times before Gus woke up. "Come quickly," she said. "Santa Claus is here." Gus's legs were stiff. He stretched and yawned. He could barely get his eyes open. But how the forest had changed. The snow sparkled in the moonlight. Gus had never seen so much white. "Follow me," called the owl. "I'll fly along ahead of you." Gus felt as if it were a dream as he leapt from branch to branch. Santa Claus looked up at the tree and stretched his arms up to Gus. The little Dormouse's heart beat wildly. He jumped. Warm hands held him, and a friendly face was looking down at him. "Gus, I was waiting for you. Now here you are with me," said Santa Claus with a laugh and stroked him gently. Then he fished in his pocket and gave him dried apples, pears, and plums. Gus nibbled contentedly. He was so happy. It was very late. Santa Claus had to go on. He had a kind word for each animal and said goodbye. One after the other, they rubbed their heads against his shoulder and let him stroke them. Then softly, the animals left the clearing. For a long time, the woods rustled, fluttered, and snapped until each animal and bird had settled into its own place again. Only Gus the Dormouse did not go home to his own nest. He had crept into Santa Claus's pocket and happily fallen asleep. Merry Christmas, everyone.